Welcome to the Do Good X podcast, a sanctuary from the entrepreneurial grind. Hosts Kimberly Danielle and Stephen Lewis, advocates for impactful entrepreneurship, guide you on the path where purpose meets business. Join us to slow down, reconnect, and explore the challenges of under-resourced entrepreneurs, uncovering the unique journey of building businesses that make a difference. Now, your host.
Hello, I'm Stephen Lewis, and welcome to the Do Good X podcast. I'm a catalyst for positive change in communities and businesses, and for over 2 decades, I've inspired leaders and entrepreneurs to live and work on purpose with intention, with their faith, and a commitment to their well-being. And I'm joined today with my colleague and co-host, Kimberly. Hey, Kimberly.
Hi, Stephen, and hi, everyone who is tuning in. I am a community builder, a coach, and communication strategist who comes from generations of faith-driven leaders and entrepreneurs who believe that our purpose should drive us all to contribute to the common good. As we continue to be in the early months of this year, this is really a natural moment to reflect and align ourselves with what matters the most. So that's why we're bringing back a powerful conversation from season 1. You may have heard us talk about it or referred to it in other episodes as well. And so we're going to revisit this episode with William McNeely, who is the founder of Do Greater in Charlotte. William's story shows us that clarity really comes sometimes when life forces us to slow down. And as many of us begin this new year, maybe with some new intentions, which is natural, his journey really offers us a grounding perspective that our purpose really reveals itself when we make room for it.
Yeah, William is such a inspiration in terms of his life story and how that is inspired in terms of his professional story. He really emphasizes that setbacks aren't always a signal to quit. Sometimes they're an invitation to discover what we're called to create that will leave a lasting impact. And as a former executive of Apple and now the founder of his nonprofit, he also chats about the importance of rest. So because he learned early that finding what centers and calms you isn't optional, but it's essential. And it's what keeps you from burnout, and it helps you to sustain your work for the long haul.
Now, Stephen said, essential. It wasn't just, this rest isn't about just the holidays and taking a little pause and then you're waiting until the next scheduled break. It's about being intentional of making room for rest consistently so that it can sustain you. It can end because you are the founder, you are the entrepreneur. It can also sustain your work. And in William's story and just how he lives and walks in his world and in the world, his faith really shapes and informs what he does in the work of Do Greater. He's very strategic, he's committed, but he's also really rooted in the belief that everything he builds is bigger than himself. It's for something way bigger. So whether you are recovering from a setback, and you will be inspired, I believe you will be inspired by his story and him sharing about the setback, the huge setback he faced. So whether you are recovering from a setback, whether you are dreaming about what's next, or you're just trying to find what your pace is going to be in this new year, I really hope that William's story offers you some hope and perspective. So let's jump back into that conversation.
Can you share with listeners how your diagnosis and experience really shaped and informed your idea and the launch of Do Greater?
Back in 2015, I was diagnosed with idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. And this is a terminal disease that had been somewhat dormant in my body for a number of years. And just reared its ugly head around 2015 as I was, growing a family, growing a corporate life, side gigs and coaching football, just a great life. And I think, one of the things that really, for me, it woke me up as it relates to the types of things that I wanted to do in my life, and really started to understand kind of what my why was all about. So I started to think about this idea of doing greater. What is it that I need to do? What is it that my life has done that will leave a lasting impact? And literally, it popped into my head, and I wrote this sentence down, and it says, commit to doing greater. Commit to doing greater things that will make an impact when you are no longer available or you are no longer here. And when I wrote that, I'm thinking, okay, what does that mean? What does it mean to do greater? And it really was based on a Bible verse that just John 14:12, that talks about doing greater things. And that popped up inside of me. And I said, okay, what is it now with the time I have left that I am supposed to do? This was 2015. I literally was on oxygen 24/7 for the next 3 years. So my life changed from, being pretty vibrant around the community, and making an impact, to, carrying 3 oxygen tanks behind me 24/7. And it happened overnight. So the change in my perspective and my mind had to change overnight. So I could have at that point said, okay, my life is over. I'm done. Let me lay on the couch and just wither away. But my perspective was, okay, with the time I have, what is it I am supposed to do? And what does that do greater look like for me? And so that's kind of how I approached it at that point. And 3 years later, 2019 was when, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis just took over. And on my, literally looked on my chart at the hospital, and it said EOL. And if you're in technology, EOL means end of life. And my chart said end of life. I went into the doctor and in rehab, and right before my lung transplant, he said, William, you have 2 weeks to go. And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, well, you've got 2 weeks that you would either not be here in the next 2 weeks, or you will be so weak that we can't transplant you. This was on a Thursday when he told me that. And I think one of the biggest lessons that I learned at that point was this whole perspective shift of how you look at things, which is helping me in my nonprofit now. So my shift at that point was not that I had 2 weeks left. My shift was I have 2 weeks to figure out, or the doctor had 2 weeks to figure out, or God had 2 weeks to miraculously change the situation where, I'm moving on. And so my mindset was not that it was over. It was that, 2 weeks from now, I'll be doing something that will continue to make an impact in other people's lives. So I gave myself 2 weeks. The doctor gave me 2 weeks, but God said, on Saturday, I was transplanted. So 2 days after that, when people have been on transplant waiting lists for 6 to 8 months, took 2 days for the lungs to be available. I was transplanted on a Saturday. Sunday morning, I woke up breathing. And at that point, I remember vividly, I actually had an iPad on my lap as they were pushing me back into surgery that had the vision for Do Greater on it. And I told the doctor, I said, take this iPad and give it back to me in the morning when I wake up, because I need to be doing this. And sure, the next morning I woke up, I got the iPad back and started planning and developing the next steps of Do Greater Charlotte.
So in 2019, you started all this in a mobile truck for underserved youth, and then you found a permanent home for Do Greater in the basement of Shiloh Institutional Baptist Church. Tell us a little bit about what led to that expansion from a mobile truck to actually bricks and mortar, and what are some of the challenges or opportunities that this provided for you and your business?
So we reached out and started to think about what would it look like for us to have this mobile truck, this lab that went out into the community and started to provide this access to technology, particularly in communities that didn't have access to it. To us, it was a rolling Apple store. It was, taking this whole concept of creative technologies that you could experience in an Apple store, taking it inside communities and inside cul-de-sacs that we can pull up, toot the horn, wireless broadband, iPads, all these things in this truck. And kids could come out in their own neighborhoods and experience this technology, along with these connections that we were bringing with mentors that were coming along as teachers. And so that was the first kind of iteration of the idea. And this was 2019, pre-COVID. So, as we started to go into COVID, at that point now, you're not putting 15 kids in the back of a truck. So schools closed. Our target went inside their own homes. And we decided at that point, just through lessons that we had learned through the truck was, there were three things that were really needed in order for us to build out this nonprofit. And it's just listening and hearing the types of things that our kids were telling us. And so we knew through COVID that there was a lack of tools and technology. So when you send kids home and you tell them to learn in their own environments, this technology that they have is just not conducive for that. And so we knew that we would have to have some advanced tools and technologies that we could offer. Secondly, when you send kids home, there is no creative space for them to activate. And then the last thing was, this whole nurturing community. How can we build up a community around these kids? So we knew we needed to have a physical space that had those three things. And we reached out to Shiloh Institutional Church here in Charlotte. And there was some underutilized space that they had, as well as an old daycare that they were not using at all. And we partnered with them to convert the entire 8,000 square feet of first floor of the church into an innovation lab for our kids. So that's literally how that came about. It was knocking on doors, understanding that there was a market and a need for our services, and there was some underutilized space that we could take advantage of. So last year we had over 400 kids come to our program in our space in the first year, which showed us there was a huge need for this. But at the same time, we also started to see, because we built the space as an innovation lab, and we hired architects here in Charlotte. We built it as though it would look like it was in a corporate facility. Now we have served over 3,500 creative adults in our space last year. So these are individuals coming in our space, renting our space, having coffee, having meetings, having board meetings, because our space is, it's cool, actually. And what that does for us is allows us to have this earned revenue model. So all of that activity is generating revenue. Coffee shop generates revenue. Memberships generate revenue that we pour all back into our programming for our kids. And so when we start to look at that, we build this ecosystem of support now from outside members of the community who are coming in, spending dollars inside our space, and now supporting our programs, because all of our programs are free for our kids. And so our entrepreneurship programs, our DJing programs, our digital video programs, all these programs are free to our students, but are funded by the community because of the earned revenue model.
My question to you are what are the, one or two key insights for you as you think about your entrepreneurial journey over the last 4 years that could be instructive for new entrepreneurs who are trying to think about the ways in which they have social impact in their local communities?
One of the things I think that we've done a good job of is nurturing our image and our brand reputation in the city. And so early on, I think it's important for you to understand why you exist as an organization and how you really start to build that brand in the community. People care about what impact you're making, but they also want to make sure that who you are, that you stand for something, and you are one of the ones who are just not talking, but you're actually doing. A lot of times folks will tell me that, early on when we were building Do Greater, we would talk about the challenges in the community and how we're going to solve them. And I believe that, investment follows this very concrete vision of what that preferred future is going to look like. So you're selling what that future is going to look like, and you're selling that impact, and you're talking about, the challenges that are real in the community, and how you as an individual are the ones to do that. And so even as a nonprofit, we approach it as though we are an educational technology startup. And so if I can walk in and say, here are 4 or 5 buckets, city of Charlotte, that you're concerned about, and this is how Do Greater is trying to solve those challenges, those things match up. And when those things match up, those resources start to flow as well. I think that's one of the biggest things that some businesses and nonprofits fail to do, is really identifying what that problem is and and convincing people that you are the one to solve it. We saw the need and developed a business plan around that need. And we developed a pitch deck just like you would develop as your educational technology company. So I come from Apple, Guy Kawasaki's, 10 slides pitch deck. And we, then all of a sudden, we're out pitching just like we were, a young, looking for venture capital. And so most of our funders up front were individual investors. They were the folks who were high net worth individual investors that were investing in, high tech companies, venture led companies. But then at the same time, they had this model of kind of social impact. I need to give back. I need to, to be doing something that impacts the community. So that's where we came along and said, hey, we're just like the same organization that you just funded, but we're doing social impact work. And why don't you fund us? I would say, 70% of our initial investment up front was all individual investors. We didn't start getting corporate dollars and grants until later on into the system, as we were starting to actually build the physical space. What we did was we brought 25 kids in from the community and said, what do you want the space to look like? But not only that, when you bring the 25 kids in who are going to be utilizing our space, we paired them with our corporate sponsors and supporters. So EY and Venture for America and these organizations, our local graphic arts organization, we brought all those folks in as well and paired them with those 25 kids and said, over the weekend, we're going to develop what this space looks like. And we're going to listen, and we're going to have our architect and our designers and all of our corporate partners listening to what our kids are saying about what they need and what they want. And then we continue to build that space and now continue to listen to our kids and try to create programs and interactions around what their needs are.
Are there any other tips, or is there any advice that you would provide to folks who are thinking about starting a nonprofit and as they navigate this space and really approach that so that it really kind of creates a foundation for their success within that particular business model?
I think if anybody who is wanting to start a nonprofit needs to think very seriously about if they want to do it, and secondly, I think it's always important to have passion for what you're trying to do. And so what I mean, it's not necessarily enough to just see a particular problem that you want to solve. You really need to have the passion around those things. I mean, it needs to be innate in you that this is what I am here to solve. For me, it was, I can look all the way back into my experiences on the west side of Charlotte and see very tangibly the way my family moved from where we were to where we are today with that access and exposure. So I saw personally inside of me what that can do. And so that drives me every single day, knowing that if I provide those same opportunities for kids in our communities, that they could possibly, use that opportunity and enhance and empower that potential to help them move forward. So that drives me every single day. And I think anybody who starts a nonprofit needs to have that same type of drive for the problem that they're trying to solve. One of our core values at Do Greater is doubt the default. And really, we talk about this whole, we all fall back into, in default mode about what has been done before. So you look at organizations and you say, well, they've done these things. This is how I should do it. For us, it's going after these large, impactful projects that most people think we shouldn't do. But it's developing these ideas around why and how impactful it could be and what it can do for the city. And so I would say to any nonprofit that if you've got this big vision, go make it happen. Why not you?
Thank you for that. Why not you? So folks listening in, why not you? If you want to learn about more resources that can help you on your entrepreneurial journey, feel free to go to dogoodx.org. And here you can check out our Do Good X LinkedIn community and tools, tips, and resources that we can provide to help you on your path.
Thank you for listening to the Do Good X podcast. To continue the conversation or access our resources, visit www.dogoodx.org. Join us again for conversations that will nourish your soul, ignite your dreams, and empower you to build an impactful business, one intentional step at a time. Until then, keep striving, thriving, and doing good.